Recognizes now the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening this important hearing. Thank you to our witnesses who have joined us today to provide testimony. This committee remains committed to restoring public trust in our federal law enforcement agencies, and a critical part of that involves holding open, informed conversations with experts like yourself to identify areas of proposed reform and change that we can then use to inform our work in collaboration with the intelligence community. Last Congress, I was proud to lead the RISA bill that we've been discussing here today, which made significant reforms to how our federal law enforcement agencies handle, collect, and retain critical intelligence. This legislation was an important first step in our broader effort to rebuild confidence in the intelligence community and to keep America secure. There is no question that the abuses that we have seen, particularly in the FBI's handling of Section 702 information, are deeply troubling, and the surveillance, unauthorized or unlawful, of American citizens must be stopped. It should not have happened, and it must not happen going forward, which is why accountability and transparency and the things that we are discussing here today are so important. But it is also important that any discussion that we have about 702 include a recognition of why we have it and why it exists, and that this is a vital part of our country's intelligence gathering capabilities. It is an essential component of what we do, and it is necessary that this conversation center on how we make it better, how we ensure accountability and transparency without dismantling it. With that in mind, I appreciate your efforts to help us strike that balance and identify where we can further improve and strengthen FISA overall and Section 702 in particular. Mr. Schur, I would like to start with you, and in particular return to the discussion you were just having about the FISC and some of the reforms that we implemented in the FISC to ensure a greater level of accountability and a prevention of some of the abuses that we've seen in the past. In particular, as you know, the RISA bill implemented inclusion of a more adversarial process for FISC proceedings. You just mentioned you thought we could do more there with amici. I would love to hear more about your thoughts about how that program could be further enhanced.
My recollection of RISA is that, and I agree with you, Congresswoman Lee, that there were some very useful reforms in RISA, and we should look to build on those. Rather than tear them down. But I think one, with respect to amici in the FISA court, I think that one limitation is that currently amici are only appointed if the judge decides that an amicus would be helpful, and so that obviously leaves the FISC judge with lots of discretion as to whether to appoint an amicus. We would prefer to see that expanded somewhat so that there's a category of cases where the judges are expected to appoint amici, for example, cases that obviously involve, sensitive political issues or religious issues, like the FBI's investigation of the traditionalist Catholics down in Richmond last year or a couple of years ago. Those kinds of situations, you can identify categories of situations where an amicus, at least presumptively, should be appointed. And if an amicus is not going to be appointed, then the judge should have to explain why not.
And I would note a couple of additional reforms we made specifically in the FISC that were targeted to prevent some of the past abuses we've seen. One, a requirement that exculpatory evidence be included in an application before the FISC. And second, also that opposition research could not be the basis for granting of a warrant by the FISC. Are there other things that you think, first off, do you find those reforms to be something that was productive and useful? And second, are there other things you think we should get at or address there with the FISC?
Absolutely, those were important reforms for sure. I think one additional thing that would be very useful is to provide, create a system whereby people whose rights are abused in the FISC court, for example, like the Kevin Kleinsmith situation, make clear in the law that people who are victims of that are entitled to compensation when that happens. That will not only be fair to those people, but also will will provide an added deterrent to abuse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired.
Thank the gentlelady. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Knott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having this hearing. To all of the